welcome. Tonight we have with us Kelly Bigos, our recording secretary, town manager Tom Wooden, and selectmen Trish Warren, Wendy Wolf, myself, Denise Griffin, Bill Hamblin, and Russ Hoffman.
Still.
Sometimes I think of him as Folger Hoffman. Sorry.
Sarah
Hoffman
says I didn't
Folger.
change my name when we got married.
Okay, all right, since there was a request for the ambulance to give us their report quickly, why don't we, I don't think anything else is really that urgent. Why don't y'all start?
Okay, I'll start quickly. I think the request was for a update on the fundraising and an update on some information I sent about some proposed Maine EMS rule changes. Stevie's gonna talk about that. The fundraising report is pretty brief. The mass mailing has gone out. We have started to receive funds somewhere in the 5,000 range. We're having a little bit of a bumpy road getting the mass mailing list off the ground. We've had some bad addresses. So things are coming back and getting readdressed, so it probably didn't go out quite as big a bang as it could have, just because of some crossed up addresses, but that's being corrected. There is money coming in. And as you guys remember, we set a $50,000 fundraising goal as an offset for the budget. It's in the budget for this year, and internally we set a $150,000 goal for our annual fund drive. So that will fund 50 to the operating budget and hopefully 100 to the equipment reserve. So that's kind of where that is. Last fiscal year, I think when I was here last, right after the close of the year, we didn't have good numbers. We've closed out at just under $900 to the negative for FY 14-15. That was without funding the $20,000 equipment reserve. That transfer had not gone through yet. Includes all the town payments. It includes the funding of the capital reserve. And the grants were separate. We received $75,500 worth of grant during that fiscal year. Some of that was paid out after the fiscal year change, so we're showing a little bit of a positive on the grant funding, but it has all been expended. The grant funding and expenditures crossed over the fiscal year, so there's a little bit of a adjustment that was made there. This year, I don't have full reports. Obviously, the quarter hasn't ended. We'll have full reports with call volumes and, you know, the full quarterly ending reports as soon as the quarter ends. But at this point, with where we're at now, we're running at just under $12,000 to the negative for this first quarter. I expect that that'll probably balance out a little bit. We did the billing company change. Bubble still is coming in. We're still getting insurance companies calling, making sure that they have the right information because of the billing company change. So there's still some loose ends that we're tying up there. So I would hope that we'll finish out closer to a zero balance at the end of the first quarter, but it'll be in that neighborhood.
Also, I'm sure you've seen in the paper, we've got the Heart Saver AEDs all out around the community everywhere. We also have a CPR instructor course coming up in September, so we'll have a bunch of people that can go out into the community and teach basic CPR and first aid.
That was grant funded to do the Heart Safe community. A bunch of public access AEDs and public training of the public. So that's all moving forward.
The other thing is,
Okay, so what is the status of the new position?
The status of the position is we are in the final, there's two positions that we've been trying to fill for a month now. One is the Assistant Operations Manager, which is going to be a clinical coordinator. It's going to work with Scott on QA and training, which will allow him to focus more on the business end of things, which has been funded 2 years in a row. It wasn't a position that was filled last year. It was filled by a couple of different part-time people. The administrative assistant position, we have just finishing up probably the next week, taking applications for that. We should be hiring that soon. Jen Orchard, who's here tonight, is filling in part-time for that position.
That's great.
So we're moving forward in that direction.
Okay, great.
And you will see the quarterly reports this year. You'll see a spreadsheet which will have the call volumes and all that type of information, but you'll see all the rest of it in QuickBooks reports. That's all been, are all in the process of having all the line items in QuickBooks line up with the line items in the budget, so we don't have to do separate spreadsheet work. Be a lot cleaner, clearer. So that's all in the works, it's all in process. And we've been busy on top of that, so.
Okay. Well, it is your busy time of year. So the other question I had is, I remember in the winter when we had our meetings, you said there was going to be some strategic planning, or you were going to do a special workshop on that. So I'm kind of wondering if that happened and what has come of that.
We've been working at that a little bit at the board level. And just now as the fiscal year has changed, we're in the process of implementing the new board. It's not full yet. It'll be a board of 4 from within the service and 5 from outside the service. 3 appointed from the towns, and then two people that will be basically brought in to the board from the outside. They could be from wherever. So that's being done now. Once that board is solidified, I think you'll see that all that stuff will start to take place. There is still some changes in the EMS community all throughout the county. So I think that there'll be some more talks of that and some more planning countywide. Just last week, we ended up, we had all 4 ambulances out one Sunday evening, as well as an ambulance from Damascotta down here. So we had 5 patients, all within the matter of about 15 minutes. So it's, we're going to work through that. It's going to be a group effort with all the services in the county, because nobody can staff for those type of peaks.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think cooperation between the services and between the towns is crucial.
So that, once we have a full board and all the new processes start, that should start up, and have some information on that for budget season.
Okay. All right.
I'll let Stevie talk about the rules changes quickly, and then
All right, before we get to the changes, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
just a quick question, it's a billing question. You know, last week I got the invoice for the first quarter.
Yep.
Now, it was my understanding we'd get an invoice with the quarterly statements. Now, usually that would be September rather than July. It's not on tonight's warrant,
That's fine.
but I need to know, can you get to September? Is that, I mean, that was what I was clear of, for the understanding was when you did the report, you get paid.
That's partially my fault, and only because, I mean, put my other hat on for a minute, and when we were talking about how we wanted to do it this year, I said, well, geez, you know, I do them quarterly from the refuse district. We do them, you know, July 1st, and so that's how we kind of went after that. So that's my fault.
If you want to do it end of the quarter, we don't have any problem with that.
Okay, I mean, I was thinking it was gonna cocoincide with getting the statement. So,
Yes.
Okay,
I
all
think-
right.
Yeah.
I
If
think that's our understanding too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
perhaps with the exception of the 4th quarter. Don't you like to pay the 4th quarter?
We would pay it by June 30th.
That's what I mean,
Right,
yeah, but,
but that's the end of the quarter.
right.
The other one's all sorted out, right?
Yeah, as far as the capital reserve, that's gonna be a separate invoice, and that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. Okay, thank you, guys.
Okay, so potential upcoming state
State,
changes.
a year or so ago, changed our continuing education hours. I'm going to speak on the paramedic level because that's what I'm familiar with. It went from 58, and in 2016, it's going to 72 hours every 3 years that we have to have. The new proposal now is to up the hours. I think it goes up by 4 hours, which isn't much, but they've cut it from 3 years to 2 years. And right now, they'll track if I take a state class, it goes right on the website, and I can go in and check my continuing education hours anytime I want them. They're proposing, I guess, doing away with that and putting it on the service, putting it off onto the service. So when I come due for licensing every 2 years, Scott, being our manager, would have to stamp saying, yes, he has his hours. They don't have to send in copies of all that stuff. He just says, yes, he has his hours, and sends it into the state, and I get my license. The state, in turn, every year will do a spot check. They may call him up and say, I want I want to check 6 people on your service, and he has to provide all that information to them. What they propose doing is putting the burden from them to us, and it's a huge burden. So that would involve more staff time, more training, because now you're stretching 70-something hours in 2 years instead of 3. It's hard to get 72 hours in 3 years, let alone 2 years. For people like myself that have a normal job, I'm afraid that they're trying to phase out the volunteer aspect of it completely. And they're trying to make it so you're gonna have your big services and that's it. And that's gonna be hard on all little towns like our community, and especially up in northern Maine, that isn't covered by the full-time services. So that's coming. We did write a letter against that. Scott has also spoken to our state representatives, both in the Senate and I believe, I think he talked to Stephanie as well.
He's waiting on a meeting with Stephanie. He's talked to the representative in the
Chris.
Waldeboro area, and he's talked to Chris, mainly because he knows, I'm not sure who the representative in the Waldeboro area is by name, but he's been involved in EMS and fire in the past and has history with it, so I thought that he would be a good one to help that cause along. The other piece of this that is kind of a gray area, which depending on how you look at it and how you digest it, because it hasn't been defined, is that the service is going to have to certify competency, as well as that we're going to have to certify that Stevie took all the continuing ed. I'm going to have to sign a document that says that Stevie is also competent to be a paramedic. So,
Yeah, part of the training out of that 72 hours is they're gonna put it off onto the service and say, you can test that paramedic however you want to, but you're gonna guarantee they're competent. So they're not gonna give you guidelines on what you test them on. So if you test them on cardiac and they say that you're not competent in trauma, it all falls back onto the service is what it amounts to. And that's,
Well, it sounds kind of frustrating.
yes, very much so.
I'll say it sounds ridiculous, actually.
It's-
It sounds like a complete abrogation of the state trying to set some reasonable standards and putting this all on local services, which means there's no standardization, and you all take on the liability without having any guidance, which I think is deplorable, frankly.
and that's how Maine EMS was 20 years ago, is all the regions in the state kind of did their own thing. If you worked in eastern Maine, you might be able to you might be able to practice in one manner. If you worked in southern Maine, you might practice in another manner. And then Maine EMS was formed and a statewide protocol was written, which they're still going to stand behind, is that one written statewide protocol. But every service is going to have to manage their training and their licensure and everything on their own.
Well, if the final regs haven't been changed yet and you want a letter of supporting your position, don't hesitate to ask. Because I think some of us would be happy to write something on your behalf.
I know when Chris Johnson contacted Maine EMS. They said, oh, no, this is just talk right now. These aren't any proposed changes, you know how, but yet you get something in the mail from them on their letterhead saying, hey, this is what we're thinking. Well, that to me is proposed. But
Yeah.
the big bureaucracy.
And in the
is bad.
midst of all this, the head of Maine EMS is retiring, and somebody new has to be appointed this year. So there could be significant changes just in that.
Okay, well, we'll watch and see what happens. So, anything else of particular interest that you want us to know about? Well, thanks for coming tonight, we appreciate
Yeah,
it.
just briefly, hey, I was delighted to get the letter for the fundraiser. You guys have been, trying to do that for a while, and you did it, and I'm very happy about that, so thank you. And I'm also glad to hear that you think the books are gonna be in order. I will say, I will wait and see, because we've talked about that before, but I think getting it moved on to QuickBooks is the right thing, so I'm glad to hear that as well, so thanks.
Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Okay,
Have a quiet evening.
Yeah.
okay, so we'll move back onto our agenda. So Tom, town manager announcements?
Thank you. Just a reminder that this Wednesday at 4 PM, there's an elected officials training at the VFW Post 4525 in Waldeboro. I know Trish is going to that, but just to make everybody else aware of that as well. At our next meeting, which is August 10th, starting at 6 o'clock, we're going to have two different presentations regarding the investment, the RFP for investments from the First and from Bath Savings. And also Michelle, the town clerk, has asked me to propose to the board a nomination for the Boston Post cane. There has been a posting for this for the last 60 days. We've received two nominations for the Boston Post cane. One is Florence Haggett, who's 103, and one for Lucille Mason, who's 98. Michelle suggests Florence Haggett, a Booth Bay Harbor native, born November 13th, 1912, is the next recipient. So I would just ask the board to nominate Florence Haggett as the recipient of the Boston Post cane, and we'll make the presentation as soon as we can.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Great, thank you
So
very much.
moved.
That's all for now.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
How did the staff customer service training go?
I think it went well. I think people got something out of it. I mean, there was a little bit for everyone as far as the do's and don'ts of what to do in customer service. I'm sure everybody took away a little bit of different things from it. Thankfully, there was no role playing. But it went
That's
well.
the best part.
Yeah. So, yeah, it went well.
Okay.
Julia, financials?
Okay. Total revenue year-to-date, $105,069.68. Total expenses year-to-date, $464,046. 4 weeks into it, you won't have your graph tonight because we're still waiting to put it all together in comparison to this time last year, but I did happen to take a sneak peek back, and we are on target in comparative.
Good.
And tax bills will be going out shortly, so we'll see increasing revenue on that side. Total accounts payable for this evening, $84,247.30. And the bank balance is $1,436,104.24.
Great, thank you. Any questions? No? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, do we have a motion to approve the minutes with the one edit correction that came through earlier today? Okay. Okay, any discussion? No, all in favor? Great. Minutes have been approved. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, old business. We have two items of old business tonight. The first one is the whole topic about the former tennis courts. And Danielle? I think you're here tonight to, as you promised us, you would be back.
Sure, you ready? So I did create two options, which I will show you. And I was not at the last meeting, but I did hear that Don Layton did a plan that he presented, at least a concept rendering for the area that showed some improvements, at least from a 3D perspective down in this area. So I included that on this plan for perspective. That little?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. And actually, just because I know they're small, I brought some of those in the team if you want to have
Thank you.
those ones to look at. Yeah, so I've shown two options on here. So, you know, Don Layton's plan, I thought was very well done. And with the addition of the flagpole in the corner, some circular fencing. Anyone? You can pass this around. So I thought that had very good ideas to it. So I was asked after leaving the last meeting to consider adding a pickleball court to this. So what I've shown here is two options. The first one on the left, which is option one, kind of holds the existing geometry of the former tennis courts, and it includes a basketball court to the west, closest to the football field, and then it shows 4 pickleball courts closer to the road. And those work pretty well in that area. These are actually a little narrower than the 2 basketball court option, which was a little wider than the tennis courts. So this fits pretty well on the existing tennis court footprint. And, you know, I think one of the elements of Don Layton's plan that was pretty nice is he had suggested a landscape perimeter and kind of push the fence off so that it was tucked into the landscaping. And you could certainly do, you know, even a picket fence or something, but if needed, line it with some sort of mesh or something so that balls wouldn't go flying off into the road. So I think that could work with this plan as well, and it preserves the Blue Star Memorial, which we've shown closest to the road where it is currently. And then option 2 is really taking Don's plan and putting it on the site plan, rotating the basketball court, and rather than have what he had proposed as a horseshoe and a play area in the corner, I fit 1 pickleball court in there and still managed to have kind of the circular fence and the flagpole, and, you know, he had a sidewalk system that kind of directed people back to the center of the field. So those are the 2 options. I think they both definitely have merits.
I have a question.
Sure.
The pickleball courts require some sort of fencing of some sort of, I assume, to keep the ball from just going everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, like any sport, you know, you often will see basketball with or without, and without, you're dealing with people chasing balls across
One was
the
how high.
lawn.
I mean, one of the
Yeah.
things we liked when we took the tennis courts up was, you know, we got rid of all that big, high
Yeah.
chain link fencing, and we didn't, because it didn't add any, it was very ugly.
Yeah, right.
But this could be a low profile thing, is that right? This isn't to keep it from flying, but it's to keep it contained?
Yeah, I'd have to, you know, the photographs I've seen had pretty high fencing, but I'm sure I could look and see what, I mean, again, if it's not a regulation court, you can do whatever you want, you know, so, you know, Don's just pushing the fencing out to the perimeter. It's not ideal for competition, but for people that are just out having a good time, they can certainly chase it a little bit across the lawn, and you don't have that formidable presence of a fence that's right up along the edge with these landscape areas around it. So I think that's probably optional, but I could look at fence heights and see what the range is, what they recommend, and versus what you might find. You know, I understood, I think from basketball that was not going to be fenced. Is that correct?
No, we were trying not to put fencing in at all,
Yeah,
but
no.
primarily just beautify it with, you know, vegetation and trees and so forth.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think, again, if you put something around the perimeter, there are wetlands here, and, you know, the road on this side, both these areas can be densely vegetated, and a fence put along the perimeter with a mesh.
This side common to Emery's fenced anyway, isn't it? It's got a fence there, I think.
Yeah, I can't remember
I
if
think
it
it has a
does.
small one.
Yeah.
definitely will.
And the orientation of the courts and stuff in that first one is north-south, and then the other one is
Yeah.
northeast-west?
Yeah, this one is 45 degrees to that, basically.
So one player's always
Yeah.
going to have the sun in their face?
Yeah.
Okay.
How does that work?
Okay. Questions? Questions from the board, and then we'll get to questions from the audience.
Sure. I'm happy to
Go ahead.
Thanks very much for incorporating some of the elements of the design. You know, I've been thinking about this, and when I look back at the discussions, I think the thing that we are trying to accomplish as the highest priority is beautification. To have sort of the entryway really look welcoming, and not necessarily that we need to have, you know, a sports court or a basketball court or a pickleball court. So I appreciate the attention in the bottom design to thinking about the landscaping with a little bit more detail. And Denise, I believe you sent a note that we've had some volunteers to help us think about the landscaping.
Sure.
And I'm just curious if either of those designs on the top would inhibit more robust landscaping that would address the beautification issue.
Yeah, I think certainly, and again, this is the rendering that Don Layton did, and I've adapted that in this plan to basically add the pickleball court right here, and possibly I shifted that back a little bit to make that fit, though it's, you know, it's relatively close to that concept. I mean, this, by angling it, I mean, you can see it has a little more green space around it, even this court, and if you can imagine these just perched up a little higher than the lawn around them, people could wander around and play, and there's definitely more room for landscaping just because primarily there's less court surface. And making this corner a feature by more densely landscaping it and doing the flagpole, I certainly think from a beautification perspective, that allows that tree line that we've talked about extending that goes across the school now and would go across this parking lot to continue, and I think it really doesn't take away from the Blue Star Memorial that's already there. It kind of creates its own little spot at the corner. So, I mean, that one definitely has more landscape opportunities. This one is very, very similar to what is there now. So this court size with 4 pickleball and basketball, if you look at it, you're pretty much looking at what that would be like. I could imagine maybe doing some grading to blend that in a little bit better because it is kind of a perched pad right now. I wouldn't necessarily cut it down, but maybe look at filling around. And, you know, this area does have some wetlands, so there could be some plantings, but you definitely want to do some fencing because people will lose balls in there because it's wet. Yeah,
So my preference would be not to pack it with the court so tightly as your design on the left, but really allow us more green space
Yeah.
to really emphasize the fact that the goal was to have the gateway
Right.
and
Yeah, definitely.
beautification.
You know, this version of the plan I think does that for beautification.
Yeah, I appreciate your additional work on that.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that I did also kind of clean up the parking lot that we had talked to and remove the pavement that was between the sidewalk and added some end caps to the end of the parking for landscaping so that in each of these, right now each corner is kind of just striped and you can't park there, but it's paved, so.
Yeah, thank you for that.
In version 1, you have 4 pickleball courts, and in the other one you have 1, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Did the number of parking spaces change in either of those drawings from what's there now?
Yeah, I mean, it did go down, only because on this side, at least in this concept, there's a few parking spaces on that end, which I took off because of the adding the circulation and the slopes. And I don't have a lot of detailed topography. It would depend on what our goal would be for getting pedestrian slope up there, but it's pretty steep hill, so if we wanted to try to make it an accessible slope, we might need a little more land. So for now, I didn't show those right there, so we lost a few there.
But the number of spaces between, let's say, version A and version B don't change because of the pickleball courts.
No, yeah, this pavement area, you know, all of these spaces exist. It really just kind of lost dead spaces in here. I might have taken one out by adding these 2 green islands. And here, a lot of that stripe, so I trying to think how many.
There's
on-
36 there now.
Okay, yeah,
On
and I
the
have,
first drawing, you lose 10, and the other one, you lose 8.
yeah, in this one, I have shown 8 that are gone. Yeah.
Has there been any,
But I could probably add 4 of those back in, you know, if we did parking here, if we had adequate, if we could get the sidewalk to work where it had gentle enough slopes going up to the school.
has there been any conversation with Dave Benner or anybody from the school in regards to putting trees and picnic tables out, encroaching upon the fields?
No, and, you know, this football field is the perimeter, so that is the play area, you know, so certainly this area right here, I know they use, it's beyond the basketball, and I know the kids use that to practice and things, but yeah, I have not approached him.
Where's the town line though?
That's actually, the field itself is ours.
Yeah, I think it's,
It's all ours.
yeah, it is,
So-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on the type of picnic table, you could move them around. I mean, in this area, in Don's rendering, he showed kind of more of the formal picnic tables in this area here, kind of off to the side, and that could be left open where the Little League kids play.
The only reason I was asking is that as we finalize this, I think we should get all the different people who have opinions of that area,
Sure.
you know, to at least weigh in on it.
Well, I think that's a really good idea, because we had, somebody alluded to it, but I mean, we've had a lot of really wonderful volunteers come forward and say they'd like to volunteer some time. For example, Bill Kalina from the Botanical Gardens is, I think, willing to help out with some landscaping ideas, and, you know, and some other people as well. So, yeah, maybe what we need to think about doing is like a special workshop where we can get all of those really wonderful experts together and really take, hear some ideas and take advantage of their expertise, because certainly some of those folks are way more talented than I am when it comes to this kind of design work. So, but I think this is a great start, and certainly I'll echo what Wendy said. I really feel that one of the primary goals is we want to make some changes, but we want to keep beautification and entryway, gateway to the community in mind, and also zoning, so that the landscaping there that you put, that you added to the, yeah, in the parking area meets our current rules, which I think is critical that we at least abide by our own ordinances. So, a little minor detail.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Denise, I know, I'm picky, so, okay.
Let me-
Yeah, I was gonna say, before I go to the audience,
Let me,
other
first of all,
comments?
echo Wendy, and that I think this is an opportunity to make the drive into our region prettier and nicer, and I think that ought to be at the forefront. And for that reason, I certainly favor less asphalt rather than more asphalt, so I would also prefer the drawing on the right with the landscaping, and even just landscaping that parking area, I think will be a tremendous benefit. And if we need to lose 4 spaces to do that, I'm okay with that, certainly. Was there 8, I'm okay with 8 spaces.
There you go.
Was there any thought to striping the proposed basketball court so that it could handle a pickleball as well?
Not really, just because of the fencing. The pickleball has a fence that's 20-foot wide court, and it has a lower than a tennis fence,
Right.
but a 36-inch high fence. And the striping is just different, you know,
Right.
it would be inset. This is 50,
Right.
so the fence would be, I mean, you could potentially do 2 pickleballs on there for 2
Yeah, 2
fences.
pickleball courts will fit on a
Yeah.
basketball court.
And then someone would have to remove the fencing, or, you know, keep it stored somewhere if we're used as a full
Does
basketball
pickleball
court.
require fencing around the outside? Is that part of the play surface?
You know,
Do you
because
have anybody here who
this,
can answer that?
Pickleball players?
Yeah, please answer that.
Yeah, please illuminate us.
Well, first
Could you
place,
show us some shots first?
my name is Chuck Dinsmore of East Booth Bay, and I'm a pickleball player, as of these people here. And this is a pickleball. Awesome. In case you haven't seen one. It doesn't go very far,
Right, that's what I thought.
and I think certainly a smaller fence would certainly contain this ball.
and what if there were a pickleball court and some lawn and then a fence. You know-
Pickleball court and some lawn.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
you know, a fence that's pushed back into the
The
landscape.
grass would stop this ball in most cases.
Okay, yeah, so
really
having a
would.
lawn
It really
around
would.
it would slow it down.
We have about 25 people now that are playing pickleball on Tuesdays and Thursdays down at the high school tennis courts right now. The courts, of course, are not marked for pickleball. So we have little plastic things we lay on the courts and we can outline a court there. And it's pretty popular, because a year ago, we hadn't even started playing pickleball in this area.
So the question that I have for you is if the basketball court were striped with a pickleball court, and then there was some way to place the pickleball net,
Well, we have portable nets, they can be placed
so you
anywhere.
have portable nets. So
Yeah.
if the basketball court were striped, that would give you additional play area, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
we really would love to see at least 2 pickleball courts.
Yeah.
So you think this is a
I mean-
good idea?
To keep the asphalt down, I would suggest that either we could.
Well, you could take this, put it right on there, I mean, you can stripe it for four.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
you could fit
question is-
4 on one
Yeah,
basketball court.
we can put our nets pretty much on any surface, you know, a hard surface that is marked.
okay.
And do you have recessed holes in the pavement to accept the nets, or you just have
No,
a
the
net
net is
that's...
totally portable.
Okay,
We take it apart and it goes into a bag and we carry it with us. You know, now,
So most-
this is not, they're our permanent nets,
right.
but we can operate with the portable nets if we had the courts and have them marked.
And maybe there is a way to have a permanent that rolls up or something,
Yeah.
and you keep it on the side, or...
Right, that's what I was going to suggest, because
Yeah.
if somebody came to visit and wanted to
Janet,
play.
tell them who you are.
Oh, Janet Brennan. Just if somebody came from out of town and wanted to play pickleball, they wouldn't be coming with their equipment. So, I mean, they might come with a paddle, but they wouldn't have the net. So there has to be some way that maybe, as you just mentioned, rolling it to the side, so maybe the town would
Well,
own.
one option, if we go on the right, is we have one permanent pickleball court that could have a permanent net,
Oh, okay.
and then stripe the basketball court for
Okay.
2 other pickleball
that
courts. And then
sounds-
you have the option, you could have
that
one
sounds
basketball game, one
perfect.
pickleball game, or 3 pickleball games, or,
Mhm.
you
So
know,
one
whatever.
comes with a permanent professional
Yeah,
net that's
right.
installed
I
for the
mean,
summer. Yeah,
Since
Yeah,
the
that would be
pickleball
good.
court is smaller, having that asphalt doesn't bother me as much as the one on the left. It still leaves room for picnic tables, and if we want to, in the future, have some playground stuff there, there's room for that.
Get 3 courts.
yeah, that's then you have the
So
option.
I would advocate having your plan on the right, and then stripe the basketball area for pickleball as well.
Me too. Yes, ma'am.
Is there any way,
Can you tell us who you are and what town you're from?
Jan Denslow, Booth Bay Harbor, is there any way on the second option that you can move the court back and add another court? So that we would have 2 permanent courts?
Yeah, it's really tight in this orientation to do that. I did try to do that, either 2 this way or 2 this way. And I think I mean, again, with the object of beautifying the corner, I think it kind of eliminated this concept here with a fully landscaped corner with a hole.
I mean, even if you moved it closer to the basketball court, could you get 2 courts in there?
You can. I've measured it out, you can.
I could do a smaller court too. I mean, we haven't really talked about what your objectives are. I've shown a pretty large court there. I mean, if we were going with a high school size court. it
The
would be-
basketball court, you're saying, is high
Yeah,
school size?
yeah. I mean, you know, a high school, I think, a high school court is 84 by 50,
Right.
and if you can get 10 feet all the way around, that's lovely. So I've shown, I believe I've shown 94 by 50 with 10 foot all the way around, but it could be, you know, you could be as low as 3 foot around. So we could probably, I mean, I could probably look at it when I get into hardlining it and see. I don't think it would be, you know, I personally like having the grass separation, like you said,
Yeah, I do
there's
too.
not a fence there. The ball's gonna roll off, it's gonna get stuck in the grass, people watching, have a more casual area.
Because if we could get 2 permanent courts,
Yeah,
that would benefit us a great deal more than having to set up every week or every day that we use the courts. I mean, it takes us 20 to 25 minutes to measure everything out every day.
We wouldn't have to measure, the lines would all be
I
there.
know, but what I'm saying is, even if we're using the basketball courts, we're still going to have to figure out where those lines are and put up our portable nets. So it's still gonna take us time to set
They were gonna
stuff up.
line it.
The lines are already there. All you have to do is set up
No,
your
but still, we
net.
still have to set up our portable,
Just the net,
yes.
just the net.
Yes.
The lines what you hear.
The
Yes,
line.
but we're still gonna have to have some setup.
Danielle, am I correct in that this, that you have here, this is conceptual, but it's not to scale?
No, it is to scale.
It is to
So I
scale?
did this, I have a survey of this area, and I have the wetlands, roads, and so I did trace over that. I don't have topography, which, you know, it's
Pretty
low
flat.
here, it's
Pretty
high.
flat except
Yeah.
for the ditch
Yeah.
along the edge, yeah.
Yeah, and it's flat, which if anything is a problem, just because I wouldn't want to trap water in here. It's like, how do you get it out of there?
Yeah.
You know, it's very flat, the storm drain is very shallow, the water table is very high. So, you know, in this
I was gonna ask you
scenario,
about that.
we'd have to, you know, make sure we had, between the football and basketball, we'd have to do just a
Yeah.
grass
Make a swale or
conveyance
something.
swale.
Yeah.
Does the added vegetation on the corner help or hurt you with the drainage?
I haven't really, you know, again, is this in wetlands or is it in upland? I haven't looked at it that closely yet. So some of this vegetation, at least in this area, could be, possibly we wouldn't do anything, maybe it would be existing vegetation because it is wooded there, you know, but this corner right now is quite open, you know, it's
Right.
where that big sign is. So I think that would only help us really.
Yeah, I think it might help you.
Yeah.
It would slow down
Yeah.
the
I
transport.
mean, we'd still have to get the drainage either, at least a storm drain on this side, but here there's definitely that wetland swale. But I think we could look for that.
There's an electrical hookup not too far off the, if you look at the first drawing there, yeah, on the top right of the basketball court, there's an electrical hookup, probably about where that first tree is.
Okay.
And if we were to, in phase 2 or 3, want to put lights in there at night, put them on timers or something, you might want to consider the orientation of the courts as far as how the lights might interfere with the road going by. Just something to think about. Wouldn't want it shining at cars in one direction or the other.
Okay.
Do you think it would just be a future thing? If you?
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't planned
Yeah.
for it at this point, but it's nice having the hookup right nearby.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Walter Crepon, I'm from East Boothbay. I have another suggestion for those who are advocates of green space. The situation that we have now, and some folks are aware of that, we play up at the so-called community courts. The school board's in total control of those courts. We have just asked for lines to be put down on one court, which would allow us to play 2 games of pickleball. And that's really all I'm going to comment on, but just saying that if we had those lines, we probably, or you might be able to have more green space, and we'd be satisfied for 2 courts. So that's, I know that's not your decision here, but that's a suggestion.
Great, thank you.
We'll have one in 1 week.
Yes, sir.
Jordan Fisher from Booth Bay. I really like Mr. Hemlin's idea of having 1 pickleball court and then lining also the basketball court for 2 more. That would solve a lot of problems. And also, I don't know the exact dimensions of the grass between the pickleball court and the basketball court, but if it's grass for any length, we wouldn't even need a fence. That ball stops dead. The only reason it doesn't stop dead is because we have all asphalt up at the high school, and there it rolls forever. But on the grass, it would stop immediately.
That's good to know, thank you.
That's good, because I think the preference is not to have these fenced in, so that as you're driving by.
You wouldn't
see-
have to have it.
Yeah, okay, good.
Grass would do it.
Basketball.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Russ Brackett from Habitat Solutions, and I'm on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce. And I just wanted to kind of depart from this whole idea a little bit. And my thoughts, and talking with a lot of my associates and my customers and whatnot, is that we should be probably looking at this thing as a benefit to the whole region and not just a handful of people. And my thoughts are that we should have something iconic in this area, that people coming into town, particularly for the first time with kids, that sort of thing, are gonna see something that they're gonna remember, and it should be something that the town is known for. I mean, the town has basically 3 industries, which are tourism, lobstering, and boat building. And my thoughts, I would absolutely love to see something in there that involves one of those industries, and in my thoughts is the lobstering industry. And I think that I'm departing totally from what you guys have been talking about here tonight. So to do something even remotely like this, we would really have to table this and put a lot more thought into it, without any question, to accomplish something like this. And I have a picture of like a large lobster that was constructed in Shediac, New Brunswick. And this thing pulls in 500,000 people a year, which is amazing. Just this one item that you can go see. Kids can climb on it. It's beautiful, and with the proper landscaping around it. And the thing is, once you get a bunch of kids that see something that they're going to remember 10 years from now, I don't think they're going to remember a beautiful park, and that's nice. But you know, something that represents the town itself. You can see parks, basketball courts, pickleball courts. Anywhere you want to go, you can play you don't need to play pickleball or basketball on the side of the road that people are driving in by. I mean, I think that serves a minority of people, as opposed to, you know, letting a huge amount of people be affected by this place. And it's the gateway to Boothbay Harbor, and it should show and represent us as a whole, as people living here and people working here and the businesses. So, anyways. It's my thoughts, and I have pictures of the place in New Brunswick if anybody'd like to see it.
Okay, that'd be great. And actually, if you could email them to the town manager or to one of us, I'd be really curious, and I'd be great. I think it'd be great for all the.
May I give you these?
Oh, sure, that'd be wonderful.
And
to have them with you.
Yeah, I'll do that, sure.
Okay.
It's also known as the largest lobster in the world, so.
That's a big lobster. Yeah.
That's
a huge lobster.
And that has no
Oh,
landscape.
talk about playground.
If you remember correctly, that property has a restriction on it.
Yeah.
That it has to be used for recreational purposes.
It has to be recreation?
Yes.
Nothing but recreation.
This is a different kind of recreation. This is
I'm not sure what you call that.
playground
Well, it's
recreation,
just
is
a thought,
what I
you know,
call it.
for families, really, so.
Yeah. I would show it to the audience, I'm not sure you could see it from up here.
Looks like a lobster.
It's a big lobster.
That particular one weighs 70 tons,
Wow, that is quite something. Okay,
but you would definitely remember it.
yeah.
Maybe the kids will play it.
Denise?
Great, something to think about. Yes, Mr. Tomko.
Mike Tomko, 59 Rhodes End, Boothbay Harbor. Last time that I was at the selectmen's meeting, I told you that I would provide you with a phased approach or look from Don Layton, and he's done just that. And it's basically the same photo, but it's just been, the sports aspect has been removed. So for your review, this basically shows the green space, and leaves it as a blank canvas for a phased approach for whatever, whether it's sport courts or pickleball or anything. And that basically just represents what Danielle has said in the area. So this just shows it completely green and open for the next steps.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this plan, you could add on to it over time, which is nice. It doesn't really change the parking infrastructure or perimeter, but you can start landscaping right away and getting certain things in.
So, just another option from a resident that's really interested in helping as well.
Right, exactly. Okay, thank you. Was that a duplicate?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. All right. Good. Any other comments? Yes. Tony.
Tony Cameron, Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, and not going to really restate anyone's comments, but I think for the chamber's point of view, we really don't have an opinion over one design over the other. The only thing that we would advocate for is that just the overall importance of this piece of property being a gateway, and wanting to certainly be part of the solution to help try to find a solution that we're all proud of, and understanding that it is an important thing that, what you put in there now certainly is going to have an impact 15, 20, 30 years down the road. And something that's going to be beneficial to the community, that's going to look good, that people remember, all those things. Nothing that anyone doesn't disagree with, I'm sure, but we'd certainly be advocating, maybe taking a step to have a committee or something of that nature where people can talk and weigh in on some of these options that we're looking at tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay. Other comments? No? All right, so Danielle, I want to thank you very much for putting this together for us.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that I heard at least a couple people say that they thought it might, a workshop and getting all the right people together might make sense.
Sure, yeah.
As next step.
Yeah.
We want to make sure we do the right thing here and not, not super rush into a decision just for the sake of making a decision. So, okay, so maybe we'll poll, we can put together a list of people and send out a poll with some possible dates.
Sounds good.
Yep, and I'd be happy to provide any graphics you want for the meeting, or provide these boards if that would be of use as a starting point.
Great.
Let me know.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Trying.
If I
Yes,
may.
absolutely.
I think it might be useful if we consolidate what I think is the sense of the board, which is the diagram on the right is the one we would like to carry forward,
Okay.
rather than the one on the left. Anybody disagree with
Yes,
that?
I agree with that.
Well, maybe.
I'm leaning more to the one on the right.
Sounds like the one on the right has a lot of groundswell of interest. Go ahead, Bill.
I say that, I agree with the workshop will be wonderful. The counterbalance to that is we have been at this for over a year.
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, this is the second.
So we need to move the ball forward. And we've taken townwide surveys, we've done a lot of stuff. And I like the idea of an iconic structure, and I'm not sure that's inconsistent with moving forward with the one on the right as well. So that's the only reason I say it might be worthwhile to give Danielle some instruction and to focus more on the less asphalt than more asphalt. And I guess we've seen all flavors of that, from zero asphalt to almost all asphalt. And I guess I would like to lean towards the smaller asphalt sides.
I think you're probably going to have more direction after you have your workshop with some of the other people that also have input into this.
Yeah.
These two
The other thing I'd like
options are pretty good.
The other thing I'd like to kind of cement is greening of the parking space. I think everybody's in agreement that we should be doing that.
Yes, that's a high priority.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's all.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. Yeah. No, I think the beautification, the green space is, those were certainly, what I felt were the top priorities. And we're thinking, thinking future, thinking towards the future, thinking about, things that the Economic Development Committee will be talking about, and, hopefully, once they get going. And I think that's critical.
I really appreciate having some pickleball players here tonight, so thank you all for coming. What do you think is the demand for playing pickleball?
It's huge all over the country.
It is really growing.
How many of you, by show of hands, are pickleball players? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of you.
And you can join us anytime.
We'd love to have all of you.
Will you give lessons?
Oh,
Yeah.
Indeed. It doesn't take long to catch on.
And even if you don't play well, they let you play.
A pickleball court is a beautiful thing.
According to a representative out of Portland that represents the United States Association of Pickleball Players, says there's 800, and currently there's about 800 players, pickleball players in the state of Maine. It's growing faster than tennis.
And do you have just enough people go that can play, or do you end up having people on the sidelines that are watching?
On the sidelines.
And then you go for another
Just take
game?
turns all the
Yeah,
time.
so having some space around where people can watch.
We have a little bench.
A
Or
pickleball,
benches.
pickleball court will accommodate, 4 people.
Yeah.
2 courts, 8 people. And the game will last, 10 to 20 minutes at the most probably. So we can rotate, 16 people through pretty rapidly. And
When do you play?
we play Thursday mornings, Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 9 to 11 at the high school tennis courts. And so far, we've always been able to get a court, so,
Sometimes indoors at the Y as well.
yeah.
Bad weather.
In the winter, we play at the Y, and rainy days.
It's great.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks for
Appreciate your
informing
time.
us.
Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome.
That is true.
They can't access if they strike any other new strike.
That would be for
It's not feasible.
Oh, God, yes, that's how we got started with it.
Any alteration,
We can talk about it. We can talk.
Yeah, you understood, that's why they weren't the courts,
Okay.
stripes on the tennis courts. Invalidates the tennis courts for state matches.
Right, okay.
That makes, they weren't just being,
So,
no, that wasn't just being pissy.
let's get back on track here. And the next item on the agenda is the trolley, and Mary Ellen Barnes has come, I think, with a little discussion on trolley expenses, which is what we had asked her for.
All received a copy of the budget?
Yes,
We did?
we did.
So, do we have questions for Mary Ellen about the budget, the trolley budget? And their request was for $2,000, and there was some discussion at the last meeting about should we get the new Economic Development Committee's input on this? And the only thing I will add about that is we've been trying to find a good date for that group to meet, and the suggestion was this Thursday, but there seem to be a lot of people who can't make Thursday, so I'm not sure when that group will meet for the first time, and I suspect that Mary Ellen and the trolley management group would love to hear.
We have some confidence that it will be fully funded.
Yeah.
So, no, I appreciate that you're trying to figure out whether this can come through the Economic Development Committee or from your folks. So I think you see probably pretty traditional startup budgets, pretty tight. We've made a few adjustments from, last year we did a few extra events at the beginning of the season, renting a tent that was placed at the Newcastle train station to welcome all the dignitaries the first weekend. We got out front there with t-shirts, and so we have t-shirts left to sell, so we're not budgeted for it this year. So a little bit of adjustments in terms of some small expenses. Since we're adding some travel expense down to Pemaquid, it kind of balances off not exactly, but we're having fewer days of service. So you see a little bit less funding for the service contract because we're providing service for fewer days, but longer trips on some days.
Where is your extra municipal contribution coming from?
Newcastle,
Okay.
last year they were thinking that they were gonna take care of some of the expenses from their budget, insurance, and maybe there was some other expense that they were gonna take on, and it turned out not to be necessary, and so Lynn Maloney tried to provide in kind through the use of the public works crew there, so they budgeted $2,000 this year, a direct funding.
And Mary Ellen, can you tell us the change in grants and private donations from last year to this year?
Well, I think last year we worked with the Lincoln County Realtors and got a placemaking grant. Actually, it was a statewide grant that we got. This year, we just haven't had time to apply for funds. The foundations are, this is a project that we keep raising money for until the service is done, basically. So we're expecting more private donations to come in. I don't really know what that figure is going to be, Wendy. I don't want to say exactly. The foundations are a couple, I would say, Damascus, Newcastle, Pemmican Peninsula, small foundations that have indicated an interest in helping support this, and they prefer at this point to remain anonymous. But we've been able to at least pencil that in based on their initial okay for 2015. So we're a little tight, but we're not stopping fundraising. Because the train is coming in later, much later, we weren't able to sell ads at the depot as much as we did last year. Last year, the train started July 3rd, and we did too. This year, they're not starting until next week. And so we weren't able to use the depot as much as we did last year for selling advertisements around a really good sized map. We sold that regionally, both down here and in Damascus. And so that was an income that we weren't able to claim this year.
So Tom, let me ask you a question, or maybe you all can answer that. My objection last time was to sort of begin cannibalizing the economic development pot of money before the committee has even met the first time, and I wouldn't hate to see that as a precedent, because then it starts, well, Booth Bay Harbor took 2,000 out, so why doesn't Booth Bay pay for this? And it just would, I think, start us off in the spirit of cooperation that this is money for the group to think about how to best deploy. So what are the options beside trying to wait until the economic development group meets, which may take a while, and this obviously needs some support, to find other ways to provide support?
It's a very good question.
Well, we managed to give the ambulance money after the budget was done, so I'm asking the question how we...
Well, we didn't give them money, we had to hold a special town meeting, but...
Right, but that was post-budget, so here's a request post-budget that other towns are supporting, and I'm really asking in all ignorance how things like this kind of get handled so we can participate with other towns.
Question that may be pertinent to answering that. Is there a difference between when you need a commitment for the money and when you need the money?
I guess we could use the money by the end of the service, by sometime August, September.
Okay.
I could actually check that out a little bit, but obviously we want to be able to pay our bills, but I think there's, we're working with partners here, so
Yeah,
not sure of the flexibility, but.
And the timescales of the town issue, that's sort of now. Nothing's going to happen between now and the end of August that's going to allow us more freedom.
No. No, I think it's my understanding that the other towns are, well, just refresh my memory again, which other towns ponied up money?
Newcastle, Damascus, and Booth Bay.
And Booth Bay. Booth Bay did pony up money, and I don't know whether that came out of their 25,000 or not, but they're...
They've traditionally had discretionary funds. They have a different account.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
we don't have
but-
that. Yeah, so that's...
Fine, but I guess where I was going is whether we take it out of our 25,000 or not, I think they'll understand the reason to fund it because they've already funded it themselves.
Except they aren't funding it out of their economic development money. They're funding it out of another line item is what
Well, I
you
don't-
suggest.
I don't-
discuss that the night that we.
I don't know that we know that.
We don't know that.
We don't know that.
I'd
So I
love
think
to know
to-
the answer to that before we commit from our economic development fund.
I mean, I think our economic development fund is really the only logical place to draw that from. If nothing else passes a straight face test.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, Wendy, in the past, we would not have been able to say yes to this.
Right.
And neither can we now, unless, I mean, it sounds like the Economic Development Fund is the only place we can look for the money, right?
I mean, I think your intention was to have the Economic Development Committee manage those funds.
Yes.
Right now, what you're contemplating is giving them less to manage.
Well, wait, well, not manage, give them,
Or make
give
recommendations.
them,
They would make
right, give
recommendations,
them
yeah.
recommendations, but
Yeah.
those recommendations would have to come to the selectmen.
Right. Given the track record of getting this Economic Development Committee together.
I'm worried about it.
I don't think you'll have any decisions by the time October comes around.
Right. To address Wendy's concern, seems to me we could also, in a tried and true governmental trick, promise to
Right,
refund,
exactly, that's
you know,
what I was-
replenish that fund with an extra $2,000 next fiscal year. Given that they're starting pretty late, it may well
Yeah.
be that they don't get to spend all that this year. And therefore replenishing that fund in the future makes some sense and will not provide them with less overall funding than we've committed to.
I understand the sleight of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just concerned. I think that's, we went through a lot of negotiation with Booth Bay to sign a memorandum of agreement that we would be 50-50 participating partners in this endeavor, and now we're acting independently. When we've given a commitment that we would allow this group to really meet and convene and consider this to try and really spur economic development. And
I understand your point. I also think if we sit down and explain to them that unlike their financial structure, we don't have a discretionary fund at our disposal, and therefore, in order to fund this, we needed to do something. And that we can vote to, I mean, we can vote at any time to replenish the fund in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't think they're going to meet before it meets your time frame. But I want to be very upfront about my concerns when the group has not even had a chance to meet, that one of the towns is acting independently. of it,
Right,
so.
yeah, no, that's right, that's
I
real.
mean, ideally, this would have gone through the normal budgetary process.
That's right.
There would have been a request by the end of December, we would have discussed it through all the budget meetings, it would have been approved at town meeting.
Right.
This is fairly unusual to come back while it's actually happening and asking for funding.
So then that raises the question of why doesn't Booth Bay Harbor have a discretionary fund if that allows flexibility that Booth Bay would have to do things such as this that arise?
We've debated
Yes.
that in the past, pro and con, back and forth, and we have, in the past anyway, decided that we would like to keep the spending really firmly in the hands of the voters and to not short-circuit that. And so now you get into the question, are we short-circuiting that by this shell game that we're proposing playing? And you could argue that we are, or you could argue that the town voted to put monies towards economic development, and this, I think, clearly falls in an economic development bin, and therefore we're administering what the taxpayers have voted.
Yes, I'd like to revisit that discussion when the budget time comes about at least a very small discretionary. Because when you have someone requesting $2,000, and we all think it's in the benefit of economic development and people want us to focus on that, it frankly seems as if we are tying our hands unnecessarily to make decisions that cannot be predictable that benefit the town.
Yeah.
So I would really like to revisit that during the budget discussions this year. It doesn't have to be big. It can show that we're modest in what we're asking discretion over, so.
I appreciate that you're in a tough spot and that what with the volunteer nature of our committees, you know, we had a lot to do even beginning probably late January to sort of recast how we're going to do it this year. And so, yes, we would want to be before you next January for the right date is. So appreciate that you're sort of looking at some of the options here.
Well,
Let's move this forward.
Let's move that forward.
I move that we fund the trolley program to the extent of $2,000. The money is to be taken from the Economic Development Fund, and those monies to be replenished in next fiscal year.
Do I hear a second?
I will second that.
Okay, any more discussion? Well, no more discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
I will support the motion.
Okay.
My reservations
Motion
have it,
passes.
so.
You have your money.
Thank you. I can find out, I don't think, as I said, we didn't hear any particular line item that was, the funds were going to be taken out of from Booth Bay, so.
They do have a discretionary fund, and
I
I
was aware of
would
that.
guess
You
that they
didn't
would use
articulate
that.
So, okay, well, I appreciate the
And if you talk with them, tell them that we're not trying to spend their money.
path. Now, I'm sure they're not going to take offense about it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate the path you've taken here.
Okay, wonderful. That completes our whole business, I believe, correct? So moving on to public forum, are there any public forum topics? Seeing none, we'll move on to warrants. Can I have a motion to approve the warrants?
So moved.
Okay, and second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the warrants upon review? Motion passes. Do we have any need for an executive session tonight? I think not. Everybody agree?
I'm fine.
Okay, we'll pass on that, and then...
Move to adjourn.
Okay. This is not debatable. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay.